That's good. You're good. That's when it goes quiet. You gotta worry.
You have to pay extra for Mosquito bait.
Did they sign releases? You supposed to take it?
Yeah, I thought you were bringing those, Kevin.
The releases for malaria? I don't know what's a natural hazard.
Here at the here at the Mosquito Radio Hour, each show starts with a theme, and the tellers explore it, often in unexpected ways. Each story is true. Every voice is authentic. This show dances between the documentary and theater, creating a unique, intimate, and often enlightening experience for the audience. Crap, we're not that frickin' show. This isn't gonna work, you guys. That is plagiarism. I am a teacher. I cannot allow for that. But this has just been kind of bugging me the last couple of months, weeks, years. You know, I can remember when I was telling a story in my classroom, which I've been doing for 20 years, and when I was done, this one young man in the front row kind of looked at me, and he was actually listening, and he goes, "Oh wow, man, that's like the Moth Radio Hour." I'm like, no, it's not the Moth Radio Hour, it's Mary Schmidt, the way I've been teaching for 20 years. So I'm a little bitter. But that's okay. I decided to turn that bitterness into playfulness. And I decided we needed a Mosquito Radio Hour. Stories that sting, that bite, that irritate us, that annoy us. Stories that suck the blood from us. Stories that make us itch, scratch. Stories that get to what's bugging us in life. And so I sent my dream out into the world, and these three people responded. They were the only three people that I sent my request out into the world, because in some ways they each owe me something. That man there really does. Don't bring that up now. And so this evening, we're glad you came to play, to hear the theme in however many ways our lovely tellers bring their authentic voice to it. And will somebody just shut off that damn thing? It's bugging me? Okay. And to begin with, I've invited Greg, because Greg usually brings booze and food and many other things. And I believe he is going to share his own unique story to this theme. And so can we, with a polite golf clap, because that's the way I like to do my story times, bring forward Greg Weiss.
Thank you, Mary.
Do you want the bugs back on?
You can put it on. It works. There.
Okay.
That'll help the annoying factor.
Okay.
When I was 11 years old, one thing I wanted to do more than anything else in the entire world was move. You see, my family lived in this quaint, quiet, little reclaimed farmland block, plan, neighborhood, whatever you want to call it, in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and everybody was moving out. Everybody was moving except our family. And finally, at age 11, we got to move. Not only do we get to move, but in order to go where we were going, we had to take a plane. Because it was that far. And my father had already left to start working there a year before. So it was the first plane ride of my life from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to New Orleans, Louisiana. And it was a big grand affair. My mother dressed the 4 boys up in their suits, their suit coats and ties. And we were thinking, man, this is big, this is good, this is important. Well, we get on the plane, and we were treated to an airplane meal. And this was really cool too, because I knew that they served food on there, because my father always came home with this flatware. Am I allowed to say that? We had Delta, we had TWA, we had a good set. Anyhow, so I knew that there must be food. And except the only problem was with this one, the food, there was some kind of, I don't remember much of what was served except for the overcooked canned asparagus, which I was 11. Asparagus was a foreign entity anyhow, and the way it was prepared, it almost looked like some kind of green reptilian thing had been killed and then cooked. And, well, anyhow, that was not the highlight of the ride. Nor was actually the arrival. This was back when you could land the plane on the tarmac, and then you had to walk out and then across the tarmac and into the terminal. This was a big plane. This wasn't a little puddle hopper type things, because Pittsburgh to New Orleans, that's a big distance. So we're walking out of there, and it was like someone had dumped an ocean's worth of hot, salty water on us wearing our nice wool suits and ties. Because the temperature difference between Pittsburgh in August and New Orleans in August had to be something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 degrees hotter. The humidity was at least 100%. And I know it can't get more humid than 100%, but it felt like it. So that was our arrival. We had a chance for our family to go to, we arrived on a Saturday, we had a chance to go to the cathedral on Sunday, St. Louis Cathedral in Jackson Square. And this was all set up because my father was, among other things, a personal photographer to Cardinal John Wright of Pittsburgh, who was a good friend of the pastor at St. Louis Cathedral. He said his Father Liberto is waiting for you. You must go to church there on Sunday. And we did. And we met Father Liberto. He was Italian, which endeared him to my mother because she is Italian. And he's a priest, therefore could do no wrong. And it was the cathedral, which meant, wow, that's, it's like, there is a pecking order in churches. And cathedrals are at the top of the pecking order. So we meet Father Liberto, and he said, oh, Cardinal Wright has told me about your family. It's so marvelous that you've come here. This is wonderful. And he looked at my parents and he said, now, when did you get here? And they said, well, yesterday. And he said, really? And you have your house? Well, yes, we have the house. Has your stuff arrived yet? And my parents said, oh, that's Monday. And he said, and he was looking at the 4 boys and the 1 girl at the time. He said, and you're going to be unpacking a moving truck with, oh, no. We are going to send your boys to camp. We didn't know any better. As I said, I was 11 years old. Well, he said, you can't have, they will be underfoot and in the way, we will send them to camp. And my parents, understand that this was the time when my father had 5 children, 4 boys, 1 girl, and 1 on the way at the time, so more like 5.5, but he was making approximately, the year before he made $6,000 a year. We were going to live like kings because the next year, that year that we moved there, his salary was bumped up to $12,000 a year. We were going to be rolling in it, so we thought, or at least. But my parents were still concerned about money, and Father could see that on their faces, and he said, don't worry about the money, which was actually code for, this is a camp for underprivileged children. I'm not kidding. It was Camp Swamp Jean Lafitte. Look it up, Google it. There is a Jean Lafitte swamp approximately 20 miles south of New Orleans, and back when I was a child they had a camp there for underprivileged children. And well, going to camp, it was a, let's just say we got to leave the hot, sweaty, smelly, humid city for the hot, sweaty, smelly, humid, back-to-nature experience at Camp Jean Lafitte. And really, my brothers and I, we were truly fish out of water in this experience because we had just arrived in New Orleans. We were these little kids, and well, maybe not fish out of water, maybe perhaps a little more like a Yankee in a Confederate nightmare. Everything was foreign, everything was new. There were so many things about that experience, some of which I've been trying to block for years of therapy. But the one thing I do want to focus on that really, it's just too vivid and it's too lasting in memory, has to do with camp cuisine. And you could not find a better example of oxymoron than those two words coming together. Every day for breakfast and lunch, because they were not very creative, the meal consisted of grits and meat mystery / byproduct substance. It got to be, we knew we were going to be there for a week, so we had to find a way of entertaining ourselves because the last thing any of us wanted to do was actually eat this stuff. So I came up with the idea, because I was the creative one in the family, of having grits races. What you do is you took your plate, you tilt it at a 45-degree angle, and you hold it like that, and you time to see whose grits take the longest to slide all the way to the bottom and off the plate. The problem with that, they didn't move. So I increased it to 90 degrees. Still didn't move. I said, okay, upside down. They did not move. It was a multi-way tie. Everybody won because those grits did not move, which tells you a little bit about why we did not eat them. Dinner was very interesting because we were used to things like, macaroni and cheese, or hamburger, hot dogs and beans, that kind of thing. Welcome to the South, because every night for dinner we had red beans and rice. Not even as good as, say, Popeye's chicken version of red beans and rice, where they actually put spices and flavors into it. No, this was beans out of a can, rice that's been boiled, thrown together. But they did give us those little, they call them souffle cups, little 1 ounce, it's a white paper cup filled with a protein enhancement.
Oh, gosh.
Peanut butter. Red beans and rice and peanut butter. Now, this was pre-Food Network, so we weren't sure whether whether you're supposed to eat it out of the cup before, after, or put it on the red beans and rice to add to the umami of the dish. But regardless, that was dinner, and that was every day. But the one constant besides that transcended all meals, it was there for breakfast, it was there for lunch, it was there for dinner, was the beverage. The same beverage. Everyone at camp called it, yes, bug juice. Bug juice. And again, I was the creative one, so I thought, bug juice. It's got a distinctly blood-like color. It sort of tastes sweet, so it probably has sugar in it. It has other flavor to it that could mimic citrus, or maybe fruit, but then again, could even, who knows, could be dried, pulverized bugs. Why else would you call it bug juice, right? So, in spite of myself, and we ended up drinking massive quantities of bug juice to keep from dehydrating, among other things. And I have to say that was, as horrifying as it may sound, the experience at camp was actually, in between trips to latrine, was something that was quite memorable and even a little bit of fun. I made it through the week. My brothers and I made it through the week, which was a little victory unto itself. Because there was one kid. Well, the counselors, they teach you to do things. Back then, they could do things that would endanger life and limb whereas now it doesn't happen. There was a thing I'm going to call tree riding. What you do is you crawl up this very slender tree, and you grab a hold, and then you just kick your legs out, and the tree bends gracefully, and you ride it all the way to the ground, and their counselor demonstrated this for us and says, okay, who wants to try it? Well, I don't climb anything, not even ladders. So my hand didn't go up, but one of the brave kids got up, and he climbed a tree. The counselor said, you pick whatever one you want. Climbed a tree, and he did that, and swung his legs out, and about not even halfway down, we heard snap, and the branch let go, and a few seconds later, we heard another snap, which was a lot like the snap of the tree, only this time it was the camper's leg. And he did not make it through the week, but we did, damn it. And the thing about that, I just want to share with you in closing, those are the formative experiences that make us, that turn us into the people we become. Those are the things, yes, those are the lessons that give us our outlook on life. And I learned a lot from that. I learned that camping and we weren't really meant for each other, you see, because I have come to a different kind of appreciation. In fact, my idea of roughing it is when the hotel does not have both a microwave and a refrigerator in the room. We don't have microwaves, but we do have refrigerators, and for that I'm eternally grateful. So, I do have bug juice. But what I like to do is I always like to step it up a little bit, because instead of, well, let me put it this way, the end would be more like bug juice, except if it was imported from Italy. The other one, the recipe is here. I'll say, you can just say no if you don't want the booze. It's got vanilla vodka, X-rated fusion liqueur, which is flavored with blood orange, among other things. Campari liqueur, San Pellegrino blood orange soda, oil, blood orange fused oil, blood orange balsamic vinegar, tart cherry juice concentrate, and old smoky maraschino cherries, which are cherries that are soaked in moonshine. Try it if you like it. There's one if you would rather have something non-alcoholic. Help yourself. Thank you for being here tonight.
Wait, you liquor them up and then it's my turn.
They'll be more pliable.
Is it?
I thought it was my turn. But it's okay, actually your turn.
No,
that's right, it's dark.
It's my turn.
Oh, it's
At that
right.
point it's dark.
Dark before we
No,
get
good. Oh, but that means I can drink.
I don't know if Amy's wow. I'm tired. I don't know if Mary has anything in between or not.
And
Yes.
yes, folks. Thank you so much for that. To the blood.
It's like college.
This young lady began her life in Wisconsin, which some say Wisconsin has the most rewind. Has the most treacherous mosquitoes. But she made her way to Minnesota, which there's a whole other story of mosquitoes. But we'll just see what our theme has inspired in our dear little Katie too. Katie, everyone.
You want to know what's really annoying? Coming to a storytelling conference and realizing you're losing your voice. That sucks. All right, so we can take bets on how long my voice will last and if we'll make it through the whole story. All right. I'm 17 years old. I have graduated from high school and I'm on my way up to Door County, Wisconsin. Now for those of you who do not know Wisconsin, you can imagine it like your hand. Now I know Michigan people do this too, but really, Wisconsin, right? You can see it. Okay, so Wisconsin is here. I grew up right around here in the town of Oshkosh. And this is Door County, known as the thumb of Wisconsin. So I was driving from Oshkosh up to Fish Creek to work at this tiny little amusement park called Thumb Fun Amusement Park. I found pictures of me with my grandparents riding the rides at Thumb Fun. And they were still the same rides. And this whole place was antique, to put it nicely. And I worked there the very last summer that they were around. They closed right afterwards. And if you go to Door County now and you go to the place where Thumb Fun used to be, you will see condos. But at the time, I was loving this job, and I was so excited. I was driving in my Fiero. Now, this is where I need to explain some more. For those of you who don't know what a Fiero is, it is a very tiny car, and so you're maybe this far off the ground. It's made of fiberglass. It has 2 seats, one for the passenger, one for the driver. It has a sunroof that comes off, and it has the engine in the back of the car, with the gas tank right behind the driver's seat. What this means is that this car has been known to explode on impact. And yet, it is the car that my parents think that I should drive. So I'm driving this little Fiero up this highway going up toward Door County. Now, I've done this drive every week because I volunteered to babysit for a neighbor's son every Tuesday before I got the job in Door County. So I go back every Tuesday, I babysit, I do free laundry, and I drive back up to Door County. Now this particular day, I have spent the day hanging out with some friends at home that I haven't seen, and so it's late, and it's dark. And I turn the radio up, and I have the sunroof open and the windows open, trying to keep myself awake as I stare through that windshield. I'm on a 4-lane highway, so I'm in the left lane of the 2 lanes on my side. There's this big ditch in the middle, and then there's these 2 other lanes on the other side. And I know that in a short time, I'll be hitting Green Bay, and then I make my turn towards the east to head up towards Door County. And Green Bay is about my halfway point. So I'm driving and listening to the radio as loud as I can, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, glowing and keeping pace with my car. I turn my head, and it takes me a moment to understand what is happening, because there is a fire driving next to my car. I look back at the road, make sure I'm still in my lane, and then turn again and realize it's a car. Its hood is up in the air. The driver cannot see where they are going, and they are driving in this grassy median right next to me. I turn back to look at the road, and I see the hood that was up in the air fly across the road. It dittens the front of my car and rolls end over end and crashes into the ditch on the other side. I turn back, and the car is gone because it's in my blind spot. I look in my rearview mirror, and I don't see it. I look again, and it's not there because it has now swerved about 2 feet from my back bumper, crossing both lanes of traffic and crashing into the other ditch. I'm 17 years old. I weigh 98 pounds, and I faint at the sight of blood. I do quick calculations. Is there anything that I could do to help this person? I don't have a cell phone. Normal people don't have cell phones yet. My dad has a cell phone, but he carries it in a bag and has it plugged into his car. And I think the best thing I can do is find a payphone. Find any kind of phone and call 911 as fast as I can. And so I drive. I drive and pass cornfield after cornfield after cornfield, and overpass after overpass with no exit lanes. Not that I see a light on at all. I drive and drive for what seems like an hour, but it's probably only 4 or 5 minutes, until I see a rest stop. I pull off and pull up to the payphone. I take the phone off the receiver and dial 911 for the first time in my life. 911, what's your emergency? Okay, there's this car and it just crashed in the ditch. It's on fire. You need to send somebody immediately to help them. All right, ma'am, calm down. Where are you? On the highway. I'm surrounded by cornfields. There's no town anywhere nearby. I'm in between Neenah and Appleton and Green Bay. Okay, ma'am, that's a long stretch of road. I'm on a payphone at a rest stop. There can't be that many rest stops between Appleton and Green Bay. Okay, I think I've located you. All right, I'm sending an ambulance. You just calm down and then get to where you need to go. Wait, are you? Oh my gosh! Wait, I left the scene of an accident. That's a thing, isn't it? Oh my gosh, do I just sit here and get arrested? Ma'am, you're fine, you did the right thing. Calm down and get to where you need to go. I hang up the phone. And I pull forward a few feet in case anybody else needs to use the payphone. That's what you do when you grow up in Wisconsin. And I turn off the car because my body has started to shake. And it's really hard to breathe, and suddenly that tiny car feels like it's closing in on me. I don't even feel the tears rolling down my cheeks because I'm gasping for air. And I try hard to inhale the smell of the fresh laundry next to me, but my mind just keeps seeing that car. I'm thinking, do I turn around and go back? Is there anything that I could do at this point? And then the thought hits me. If I'd been driving just a mile an hour faster, I would have been hit by that hood, which would have gone through my windshield. And had I been driving just a mile an hour slower, that car would have swerved into the back of my car, right into my gas tank. I sit at the rest stop for about 45 minutes until I'm able to breathe again and feel like I can drive. I have an agreement with my parents that when I get there, I have to use the payphone. And I call them collect, and then I say, I'm here safely, and then they say they don't accept the charges, and then I drive to the little dorm where I sleep. But this night, she says, say your name, and I say, accept the charges. My mom says, what's the matter? And I tell her what happened. And she says, well, you're okay now, right? You made it, you're safe, the car's fine. What's the big deal? And I say, Mom, I could have died. Yeah, but you didn't. You're fine. just go to the dorm, go to sleep, you're fine. And as I hang up the phone, I'm not sure which stings more. The near-death experience, the thought of that person in that car I will never know what happened to, or my mom's reaction.
Katie, I think you need some more of this.
I think I can't drink it if
Anyone
anyone
else? I said, you send your wish out into the world to sting and bite and irritate and however people are inspired, and you never know what comes back. But Kevin owes me. Kevin once submitted a Fringe, and I didn't hear about it until, I don't know, the evening before. Maybe we had 24 hours. I don't know. Kevin, I think I emailed you this couple weeks ago, maybe. Yeah, so. But anyway, I told Kevin again I needed to have Nature Boy on my side, and perhaps he may actually even talk about mosquitoes. Or will he? It's up to Kevin. Kevin strikes people.
A long time ago, there was a monster, and his name was Slurp. Now, Slurp does not sound like a really scary name for a monster, but it's the sound he made when he took his body, bigger than a tree, covered in scales, that long, elephant-like trunk, and he stuck it into a pond or a lake or a river and slurped up all the water. Now, they say he started in the Dakotas, which makes sense. There aren't a lot of lakes there, and worked his way into Minnesota. But when he got to Minnesota, well, there were these other animals there. And they had a meeting. They say, we gotta get rid of this Slurp thing. He's gonna drink all the lakes. Now, there were 10,000 of them, so it would have taken him a while, but there was still this problem. What if he drinks them all? Now, Minnesota meetings, for those of you who haven't been to Minnesota, go on a little while. But Gray Bear said, I'll take care of it, no problem. And Gray Bear, he was this bigger than most bears these days. And the next day, early in the day, he came running through the trees and bushes, shaking them as they went, because that's supposed to be scary. And as the noise got to where Slurp was having a little nap next to a much smaller pond, he was waiting. And he was, well, how big was he? Bigger than a tree covered in scales. Very good, you're listening. And he had this great big mouth with black, slimy teeth, and he opened it, and he kept on opening it. And as Bear came running out, Gray Bear, he realized his mouth wasn't quite big enough, but he had those big legs and this big tail. And a few hours later, everything got really quiet. And you know, when two creatures have been fighting and things get really quiet, one of them is no longer with us. In fact, he was in the great big belly of Slurp, which is why we have no gray bears in Minnesota anymore. And Minnesotans know that when the first meeting doesn't solve a problem, what do? Have another meeting, because the first one didn't work. And so the animals met, so they talked, and Raven was there. And Raven said, no problem. I'll take care of it. I'll trick him till he leaves, because I'm really smart. You know, we are those really smart birds. And I'll trick him till he leaves, and then there's no problem. I'll trick him. Now, Raven hadn't thought this through real well. But the next day around noon, he flapped over to a great big tree and said, hey, Slurp, how's it going? I see you like this little pond right here, but you know, I got this really great place for you to go. It's just a little ways, it's down south, it's Iowa. You know, it's a great place to go. There's all kinds of trees, and lots of ponds, and a whole lot more lakes than Minnesota. Go down there, you'll find the best possible place to live. Now, Slurp was really big and really ugly, but he was not dumb. He knew that this Raven, who was saying such great things about Iowa, did not live in Iowa. He figured that all by himself. And And so he reached into the pond and pulled a big paw full of mud and threw it at that raven, and that was the last time the raven was seen in southern Minnesota. You don't believe me? Go there sometime. There are no ravens in southern Minnesota. They're all way up north. 2 meetings hadn't worked. Which means Minnesotans have a third meeting. You keep doing it till it fixes the problem. And all the animals were sitting around thinking, what are we going to do? That's when they heard a noise. I'll go. I'll go. And the animals looked around in the fading light of that day. And Chickadee looked around and said, Mosquito? You can't hurt me. How are you going to get rid of that great, big, enormous monster covered in scales and with slimy back teeth and a long, elephant-like nose? You can't get rid of that thing. Yeah, I'll go. I'll go. Now, mosquitoes, they don't have a lot of vocabulary. But they were saying the right thing. No, it's the one thing they wanted to hear. Someone else would solve the problem. That's what that means. The first volunteer who raises his or her hand gets the job in Minnesota. Maybe it's like that other places too, I don't know. But that evening, a mosquito came buzzing down through the woods and looked over at that scaly covered, long-nosed creature, asleep now next to a much smaller pond right there. And Mosquito flew around and heard that snoring noise of Slurp and noticed that Slurp's ear was wide open. So Mosquito flew into that ear and began to bite into that ear, and Slurp woke up. Hey, get out of my ear! And shook his head back and forth. Now, after a few shakes, Mosquito fell out of that ear and flew off before Slurp could see what was going on. And Slurp was really big, and really mean, and really ugly, but he knew a little bit. So he took some mud and stuffed it into each of his ears, so he wouldn't have that problem anymore with that mosquito. And when the mosquito came flying back around, notice those ears were full of mud, but the nose was open. So Mosquito flew into that long elephant-like nose and began to bite, and Slurp woke up again. Took a great big deep breath and blew it through his nose as hard as it could, and kaboom! Out came Mosquito with 3 really great big green boogers. Those boogers kind of plastered Mosquito right to a tree, which kept her there for a little while. Mosquitoes had to kind of wiggle themselves out of those boogers, which wasn't real pleasant. It's a mosquito, who cares? Now Slurp was really big and really mean and really ugly, but he was not stupid. He stuffed mud into the end of that long trunk-like nose and laid down and pretended to be asleep this time. You've all done this. You close your eyes so they're kind of closed. You kind of make those breathing noises. While you watch to see if anyone's looking, if you're sleeping. Slurp pretended to be asleep while Mosquito came flying back once again. And looked around, and the ears were full of mud, and the nose was full of mud. That mouth was not full of mud, but it smelled really bad. She was not going in there. And then she noticed a little patch of skin on Slurp's shoulder where there weren't any scales. And she thought, that's the place. Flew down and landed, and began to bite. And Slurp took his great big enormous paw and slapped. Dead little bug. There's something Slurp did not know about mosquitoes back then, and you don't know it either, so I'll help you out by telling you. You see, back then, in the old days, there weren't many mosquitoes. There weren't many mosquitoes because they had this magical power that if you slapped the mosquito, it didn't die. It turned into 2 mosquitoes. And when Slurp raised up his paw 2 mosquitoes jumped out and began buzzing around his head and biting his eyelids and his nose. And when he slapped it again, it became 4 and 8 and 24 and 36 until there was a cloud of mosquitoes buzzing and biting at Slurp. He stood up and began yelling, "Leave me alone, leave me alone." And the mosquitoes buzzed all together, "Leave our forest, leave our forest," and they began chasing him across the Great Plains, through South Dakota, into the Rocky Mountains, and up into the mountains where he found a cave and dove into that cave and pulled rocks down over himself. And that's the last time the mosquitoes probably chased him. They turned and began flying slowly back across the plains to Minnesota, where all the animals from that meeting were still waiting to hear a report. We do that in Minnesota. And when they heard what had happened to Slurp, they saw that even though Mosquito had those magical powers, she'd been injured in the fight. She was a little bloody. And so Deer said, "You know, Mosquito, you saved us from this horrible monster. From now till the end of time, if you ever need a little blood to make up for what you lost, come on over. We'll fix you up." And each of the animals said that. People apparently were not at the meeting. Mosquito assumed that we agreed. Which is why to this day, if Mosquito ever needs a little blood, and they do every once in a while, they come find us. And even though it's kind of annoying to have mosquitoes around, just imagine how bad it would be with Slurp. Think California, for instance. Like that here in the beautiful garden states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. We don't have that problem. They don't have mosquitoes in California, notice. They don't have any water. We have mosquitoes, we have water. Isn't that a connection? And next time mosquitoes are buzzing around, just imagine what this place would be like if we had Slurp. And that's the way it was, and that's the way it is. And that's the end of the story.
That around? That's it? What, are you surprised? If you know me, you know there had to be a costume change.
Yes.
Absolutely. I love the suspenders.
And so, you want to bring this evening to an end, I guess is my job. And Kevin, there's a reason I had you go before me too. And it's kind of, once again, I'm playing the pun again, something that's bugged me for a long time. Now, I tell stories, but you know, I kind of just tell stories about my life, because it's the stories I tell my students. And you know, people say, "Mary, why don't you do other stories? Why don't you try traditional stories?" Well, the thing is, I've got no memory. You know, traditional stories, at least I thought, you had to commit them to memory. You needed to honor the tale and the telling of it, and the tradition, and the history, and the storyline of it. And it just does not stick in my head. And so that's why I tell stories of myself, or my family, or milking cows, because, you know, well, I milk a lot of cows. But I can also just, you know, make it up as I go, too. Well, then, I found out. Oh, and another reason I can tell traditional stories is because, look at these incredible people. I don't need to tell traditional stories. There's plenty of you that do that. I can't compete, man. I never was a competitive person. But I'm a person that is thrifty and likes to make money. And so, a friend of mine who runs Black Pine Beach Resort, that's the lovely Black Pine Beach Resort up on the Whitefish Train of Lakes, just right up there by Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, right along the historic Paul Bunyan Byway, paid me to tell Paul Bunyan stories. That meant I needed to research Paul Bunyan stories. Again, that's Black Pine Beach Resort on the lovely Whitefish Train of Lakes, right north of Pequot Lakes, Minnesota. Choose Lynn and Bob's Resort the next time you're in Minnesota. I get paid every time I say that. But I found out something that all you traditional tellers have been hiding for And that's what really bites. They're lies. They are all lies. You have all been Brian Williamizing all these stories. You have. And I want to straighten it out with the biggest and the baddest of them all, Paul Bunyan. Okay, first of all, okay, yes, I apologize, Renee, this is my rant. First of all these other states and countries claim Paul Bunyan. They all claim him. People, we all know Minnesota. Minnesota gets Paul. Okay, so who else claims him? Maine. What the hell is Maine claiming him for? They got lobster. Stick to lobster, right? Okay, then you got Michigan. Michigan claims him. Michigan isn't even organized enough to be in the same land mass. What was that whole hand thing? Get it together, people. All right, you mentioned California. I looked up and I Googled it, and that's the truth. There's like 6 different communities in California that claim Paul Bunyan. I mean, come on. They elected Arnold Schwarzenegger. Really? Okay, and I know you're going to counter with the whole Jesse, the body Ventura. Let's not even go down that. But again, you got the Terminator, you don't get Paul Bunyan. Okay, yeah, Wisconsin? Really? You got cheese. And cheese is beautiful. Just stick to cheese, man. You don't need Paul Bunyan. Okay? All right, and many other places I know. But, okay, in my research, I have completely documented, unrefuted, top-notch research that shows not only was Paul Minnesotan, he was also Norwegian. I've got 5 minutes to make my point here. And yeah, okay, I know Canadian. You're going to bring up, because yeah, Canada claims them too. The French Canadians, remember that. We're going to come back to the French Canadian. That's actually an important French connection. Okay, anyway, so in my research, imagine my surprise when I found out the birthplace of Paul Bunyan was a mere mile and a half north of the farm that I grew up on. Yes, because many of you might have heard, what was it? Paul Bunyan was such a big baby. It took like 5 storks. Have you heard that one? 5 storks to deliver him. Yeah, 5 storks, yeah. Have you seen storks? Do you think really they could carry a baby? And a big baby? We're talking a big baby. No, people, you know what it takes to carry a big baby that Paul Bunyan was? Cranes. Think about it, cranes. And a very unique crane that is only found in this very unique area along the Minnesota-South Dakota line, right below the bump. There's my hometown in Marietta, Minnesota. Okay, anyway, what some people don't realize right there is the best birding anywhere. Because how many of you know that that is the home to a salt lake? And you thought only Utah had a salt lake. Wrong! Right there, a mile and a half north of where I grew up, is a salt lake. Cranes only nest there. The very cranes that could carry a big baby. And why is there a salt lake there? Gee, what does a big baby do a lot of?
Cry.
Cry! And what's in the tears of that big baby? Salt! So that is why there's a salt lake right there. Yes, people, yes. And I uncovered more. Because close to that salt lake is also the Zor Lutheran Church. And you know churches keep great genealogy, historic records. If you want to know your area, go to the church. And so I did. And I went to that church, and wouldn't you be surprised, back in their kitchen, which is the archives, that's where everything important is stored, I found these. I found drawers of these. And I know what you're saying. Well, Mary, it is a good Lutheran church. We all know there's drawers of these at every Lutheran church. Yeah, now there is, but where do you think they came from? Let us investigate this. What does this look an awful lot like? You know, yeah, sure, maybe it's an apron now, but imagine it on what? A big baby! Are you with me? It's a bib. Yes, people, all the church basement ladies have Paul Bunyan to thank for this, and it all started at the Zor Lutheran Church, which is right next to the Salt Lake, right there on the Minnesota-South Dakota line, right? But wait, there is more evidence. There is more evidence. Paul, again, was a hungry baby, and you got to feed a baby. And to feed a baby, Paul loved a delicacy that his Norwegian grandmother made for him. And yeah, I'll make the point of why it was Norwegian. And any of you that are, or have not, the Nordic persuasion, you know that the delicacy that the Norwegians do love to eat is the flatbread known as lefse. What is lefse? Well, it's a flatbread. Every culture has a flatbread. Lefse is the Norwegian flatbread. It is made of potato, flour, sugar, just the basics. That's what it is, and Paul did love his lefse. I know you've heard all the stories about pancakes, right? Paul about pancakes. They were wrong. It was lefse. It was lefse, and how do we know this? Because again, the records are left behind for us. Young Paul, once he got big enough to crawl, started crawling north because he was very bored of the prairies down here. He knew he needed trees, and trees were this way. And he crawled, and he crawled, and he crawled, and he got to a small community of Starbuck, Minnesota. They were actually just putting in a new highway, and so they had these big rolling machines that were making the highway. And Paul, big baby Paul, had a dear recipe that his great-grandmother had sent with him for lefse, and so gave it to the people of Starbuck, Minnesota, and they made lefse big enough for Paul. A tradition, which, this is going on the record, right?
Yeah.
Continues today because Starbuck, Minnesota, as many of you know, and if you don't, shame on you for not knowing this cultural, historic part, holds the world record for the world's largest piece of lefse. Yes, people, it is, the last record was, can I have a little help here, please? Oh, it was 9 feet, yeah, 9 feet, there we go, 9 feet and 8 inches. That is a big piece of lefse, and that's the kind of lefse you have to make to feed a big baby like Paul Bunyan. Are you still with me? Okay, right. Okay, so we're going along there. Okay, you hang in there, I've just got a few more minutes. So Paul, he's full, he's happy, he's everything, but he still wants trees. You know, he still doesn't like the prairie. He's still working for trees. So Paul keeps working, he knows there are trees, he hears there's trees, oh yeah, and you know, but all of a sudden, kind of in a field by Alexandria, Minnesota, the young Paul falls asleep, and the lefse recipe that he had clung to his breast, that his dear mother had given him, fell away from him, and it fell on this ancient stone. And when Paul woke, he didn't realize that recipe disappeared, and he kept going north. Go north, young man, that's what Paul did. But in that field, years, you know, of weather, erosion, and the changes, things covered up this rock. Until one day, and many of you may know this story, what was discovered in that field by Alexandria, Minnesota, is what was it? Who knows the name of it?
The runestone.
The runestone, yes! Which we know. Many people cannot interpret. They're not quite sure what it says. But we know, and again, I had some women from the Zor Lutheran Church take a look at it, and you don't question the church ladies. That is the ancient recipe for lefse. Now I know, once again, you're still not believing me. You still don't believe, but Mary, what about the name? How come it's Paul Bunyan? Why is it not Paul Bunyan's son? Or something like that, right? Peterson, Johnson, Olson, Ole Olson, any of those. This is where the French-Canadian connection comes along. Because as Paul's making his way up, this poor nameless baby, keep in mind he was nameless as he was doing all these things, he's making his way up. He encountered many bachelor farmers, Norwegian bachelor farmers along the way, that helped him on his journey. And as he made his way up, there was an expression that the bachelor farmers would say for him, an expression very well known to all Norwegian people. But you know those Norwegian bachelor farmers, they don't talk much amongst others. And there was one day that Norwegian bachelor farmers were feeding Paul Bunyan, and into their area came some rendezvousers. Canadian. And the French Canadians came and saw this huge baby. This huge, huge baby. And they used an expression which, according to Wikipedia, that's a source. They said, "Oh, my bunyan!" Because bunyan is the French-Canadian expression for, "My goodness! Oh gosh! Holy crap! Wow!" But we all know that they had actually heard those very shy Norwegian bachelors actually say that same expression when they saw the big baby, because we all know the expression in Norwegian, when you see something that's, "Holy cow! Oh my goodness! I can't believe it!" You say, "Ufta! Ufta! 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 Yeah! Ufta!" But again, they didn't. The Norwegian bachelor farmers, they wouldn't speak up, but the French Canadian took credit for it, and there we go. We have Paul Bunyan. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the very reason, along with so many, why I will never tell a traditional tale. Because they're lies. And they really bug me. With us, and yeah, I'm going to keep working that all night. Anyway, and again, there's more.